Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Inside FNATIC's Brush. I am your host, Matt Scott, for a somewhat special episode today, as we'll be going over the recent AMA that was with the LEC team, more specifically Karn, Gravs, and Geo, and see what they had to say following the questions that the fans had. Now, just so you know, there won't be the entirety of the EMA within this video. I'm going to review it entirely, but I will edit the pieces that I feel are the most pertinent as to the current situation of the team and I feel need the most commentary on. With that said, let's have a look.
So to start off, Patrick, you mentioned that we're looking to obviously support our roster as much as we can and looking forward to adding to our roster. One of the questions that I've had here from the statics is what concrete actions are being taken to ensure the LoL team has proper support?
Yeah, that is a great question. It's been kind of a public one as well in terms of our performance infrastructure, and I, as a person responsible at the end of the esports department, shape up and budgets and things like that, I can first of all confirm that the game plan was going into the offseason that we're gonna keep the same infrastructure and headcount as we left the 2025 season with. That is a performance coach, is a head coach, is 2 assistant coach, a team of 4, obviously alongside great people like yourself and Isa and our chef and other people on the ground. But yeah, simply due to budget concerns and constraints, we were unable to, we had to prioritize differently at the end. We reached an off season, looking back at the year's results where we're very far away from the performance expectations. Reminder that LEC compared to a few years ago is very performance oriented in terms of how teams makes revenue, and we had high goals last year, so it was several of 100,000s that were a deficit as we left the year. Riot also announced some changes, but that is just kind of data points that people can be aware of or choose to not be, but that was a prioritization we had to do. I don't think anyone, myself, Grabs, or the players or people on the ground, you guys work very fucking hard all the time, are like pointing at the specific hire being the main reason why we didn't perform to the level we wanted to and reach the consistency we wanted to. But obviously, let's be real, when we have a very rookie-oriented roster, when we change our core roster as well from 25 to 26, we obviously need more hands. It's very competitive out there, more than ever, I would argue as well. So that was indeed the plan, but what I can confirm, like, the plan was also to continue looking for the addition to the roster, and I'm pleased to say that we are very close to achieving that, to double down on our like the coaching setup on the ground. And we before anything is signed and done, we're not going to announce anything here, but that is a concrete action we're taking going into Spring Split and beyond to ensure, and that's something that is very important for me, whether it's in League of Legends or any of other teams, that we can always look at ourselves in the mirror, like, are we able to give these people, especially the rookies, the best possible performance platform to thrive in? And that is also taken into account now when we are actually going in with the same roster, with the belief we actually have in the roster into Spring Split.
Okay, so what we have here obviously is Karn addressing the issue where the coach, the extra coach, was missing, especially after Duffman's departure. As most of us guessed, it was due to budget constraints, as obviously FNATIC has been facing the past few years with the fact that it's a 20-year-old structure, and obviously it hasn't had the necessary success to bring in the money to be level with their expenses. So we get to see a bit more behind. Karn did mention a few 100,000s deficit, making it a bit harder to enter the new season with an extra coach. I understand obviously people can be disappointed. I guess the silver lining here is that there will be an extra coach. That is a commitment from Karn. And Karn, again, you need to remember, for those who maybe don't know, he's the chief gaming officer. So he makes those final decisions. And if he says it's coming in, then it's coming in. So, you know, it's a bit the story of FNATIC in the end, where they manage to get the pieces necessary, but it's always down the line. It's never really at the beginning of the season. And to be honest, the fact that we've been able to keep at least Richard going into the new season, for me, that was a sign of good things happening. Now we'll see if obviously the addition of this extra coach really changes anything in the long run. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if that's also enough for Grabs to bring this team to the level. I think something really important that Karen mentioned as well was the fact that they need to support a rookie team. They need to bring the necessary resources, and he's very honest on the fact that they've missed a hit. They've not been there where they're wanted. Main hurdle seems to be budget-wise, but I guess we'll see how it moves on going into the rest of the season, especially with Riot Games and League of Legends removing some of that prize pool in the regular league to reinvest it internally, but that means less cash prize for the teams, especially going into the playoffs. So that's going to be another discussion, I guess, not necessarily with Karen, but maybe with Sam, where he can tell us maybe a bit more about the new challenges of budget constraints and financial health within FNATIC.
Question here from NB regarding the versus split is essentially, I'll say it how he said it. What he's just asked, what's happened in the early games. It took the whole split to finally kill the first dragon. It looked like we just gave objectives for free. What would you have in response to that? What do you think that you could say was our mistakes in those moments as well?
No, as I said, it was a conscious decision to have comps that should outperform the other comp in mid-late game. In theory, that means we did not have to focus on having the first dragon, for example, because in the early stages of our practice and on stage, it went well this way, right? It was a winning strategy for us, so we focused on that. And while we did that, I think other teams were fast on realizing how important it is to actually not play. Like the jungler played for the lanes for us, as usual, where Ivan tries to find windows we can help out, where the reality right now is that the lanes have to play in a way that they're in good condition to contest the first grab respawn, for example. Well, we were happy to give that up, so we have good lanes, but that basically just meant the game snowed really hard. And you can still see it. Like if you guys look at the game's score against KC, for example, right? I think 4 or 5 games were completely snowball. That's just the current meta. If you contest the grab and don't get it, the game is doomed really fast. And that's why it looked so black and white. But that was less the inability to play that way, but more we choose it. Is also we chose first pick a lot and picked, for example, Azir. Again, the same idea, right? Being strong mid-late game. Whereas other teams against us chose second pick to have better lanes and then play through the lanes for the jungle, for the invades. And that's where the games got out of control really fast.
Okay, so this also was very interesting, but I feel a bit questionable as well from the coaching staff, because it feels like the read on the meta or the playstyle was completely wrong. Obviously, I understand that if they felt good, especially during scrims, in their early game, it was normal to then focus on the other parts of the game. But the fact that it took them almost most of the split, and even then, it hasn't been really achieved for them to understand that they need that lane pressure to help the jungler, and that it's no more the jungler to help the lanes. This explains a lot why we weren't getting the first objectives, we weren't even getting the first scuttles, and that's why when it came to team fighting or contesting for neutral objectives, Razork was behind at least a level, and usually it was his level 6 for his ultimate, making him much weaker than the opponent jungler. So we'll see how they fix that going into the next split. But for me, that was a very concerning topic, that they would just carry on with that approach and try to sort of force it throughout the split. As Grabs mentioned, obviously, since week 2, they've just crumbled, but even then, I'm surprised that they didn't manage to find a bounce back from that. So wait and see, I guess. I'm hoping for something better, especially if there's an extra coach to give an opinion on top of that can maybe help them sort of make their way to the right decision, especially when it comes to reaching those later part. Is if you don't have the good early game, for me it feels very difficult. to reach the later part. But who am I to say? I'm just a lowly solo queue player, but we'll see what happens.
A question that I've been given is more regarding the off season. So I think maybe Patrick, you can start, and Fabian, you can lead on from it. Essentially, what the question is asking is explaining the off season. Why had we decided to make certain decisions within the roster? Patrick.
How much time do we have? It's a big topic. Off season. So we got back. I think. Correct me here. You were both in China. I think mid October, around that time, and I think straight into it in a way. I think we even left China with some decisions taken. From a direction standpoint, going to try to keep this as slim and as cohesive as possible. We very soon understood that we need to do major changes to the roster and move away from what was previously a roster that had a core that had been together since, I think, winter 2023, which is a quite lengthy time. And we were very narrow, failing winning trophies and whatnot. But the time had kind of come to move beyond that. We don't need to say too much in the past, but let's just say that there wasn't we talked about that kind of unified commitment and belief. That wasn't really what we left the year at, despite making Worlds and making that comeback end of summer. We definitely took our time, and Fabian can come in later on and chime in at any time for that sake, but we worked very closely with Fabian in terms of assessing the options, and we didn't rush ourselves into any direction. Some of the big name players that were floating around as free agents or otherwise in the market, we definitely explored that as well. But again, I spoke earlier, like we are not necessarily at the point right now with the ecosystem changes, the esport winter, all of these things, that we're gonna do some crazy big bets, spending millions of dollars in buyouts. We actually done that in the past, right? We are taking a bit more of a long-term view, knowing that in the long term things will change very radically. More importantly, getting the kind of foundation right. So I was very pleased, at least, to work very closely with someone like Grabs, and extending his contract going into this year together. And it could have gone in many directions. Let's be real, but we were able to secure key pieces to the roster, such as Vladi, who I think was someone that maybe 5 teams in our region and 5 teams in North America were seeking after. We can discuss and devise and quantify and look at all the KPIs we looked at, but I think like we were happy going into the preseason bootcamp with what we had. Since a couple of years ago, we worked way more data-led as well, and trying to kind of find the right harmony between that part of the world and obviously the magic that comes to building a roster and fitting pieces in. I'm not saying we do these things perfectly, but it was a lengthy process. I think Grabs, we had daily meetings for probably a month time, and turned from all vantage points and angles. I think one of the decisions we took very early was Mickey X. He had a desire to build a different roster around him, and that was fair game, but it was not for us. And when we agreed early on in the offseason to a mutual termination. As an organization, you obviously also, besides those financials I spoke about earlier, you need to think about like what do you actually have on your contract book as well. So it's a lot of elements, and I think that's almost a session on its own, one I would love to have at some point, going deeper into how off seasons are tackled. I can maybe take a breath here and just ask Grabs to chime in, because I think 10 people in FNATIC was probably involved one way or another, but on the front line you have people like myself and Grabs, and keen to get Grabs' perspective. But it was obviously and importantly like a rebuild into something new, something we hope over time is better, and let's see what the future holds. We acknowledge that the first part of this year, results-wise, has been poor, and we're hoping to scale from here. Still a keyword. What are your thoughts to this topic?
So I'm sorry, Grabs, I'm just going to cut you off because I think Karn already has said a lot here about the off-season, and I think that was a very key moment of the EMA, because it sort of pulled the curtain back on some of the weird narratives that there was about the off-season, where a lot of fans and just people in the scene think that FNATIC make their decisions by, I don't know, throwing a dart on the board and this is the player that they're picking. Obviously, there's a lot of strategy, thinking, and people committed within the decisions. Karen mentioned, 10 people at least, and obviously with Grabs and other people within the coaching staff that are involved in those decisions. Again, within FNATIC's financial situation, I should say, it makes sense that they're making those long-term decisions, as Karen mentioned, and it makes some sense, but it also feels that we're not maybe going to be as strong as we want because of the age that FNATIC has, if I can put it this way, with the financial constraint and obviously budget limitations. But still, they're obviously trying to see what makes the most sense out of their decision. I just wish they would go a little bit more into detail. For instance, I was very curious to know, who are these people? Well, there's a lot of people that are behind the scene. We don't really know who they are. Maybe we'll see their names on Twitter, or even they're in the list of names that are in the EMA, but we don't really know their role, their responsibility, their impact on the decision making, or even their background. Have they been in other teams? What's their track record? I think that would be very nice for FNATIC fans to know who they're putting their trust in the long run. So, but at least we get to understand a bit more about what's happening. And it makes sense, obviously, some of the decision, Karn, obviously, and Grabs mentioning that what they were looking for was an identity that wouldn't be lost through the losses, and that would take time to build. And that's a good philosophy to have, in my opinion. It just hasn't materialized yet, so we'll hopefully see something that resembles, I would guess, their vision going down the split. But at least there was a frame to their decision making, and I think fans can now understand what it takes really to build a roster within the challenges and constraints that FNATIC has to face with the structure that they are.
Why was it decided to keep Razork and Upset together when it was implied that they didn't get along on the Rift at all last year? I will add that they did get along in person, but I think probably in game there were a few differences.
Yeah, that was a big topic also for us internally in the offseason. It's not a secret that there were differences, but ultimately I made a call, or my idea understanding was that I think this is less an issue between how Ivan and Upset see the game, but more an issue that they were the only two opinions next to coaching staff in the room. That means every disagreement was a disagreement between those two. Not because necessarily they disagree, but because, again, there was no other talking point. So over time, this of course strains the relationship, because you feel like every single time I speak up, the other person goes against me. And ultimately, we made a call because we believe that by adding people that have their own opinion and can chime in and take responsibility, the burden on those two will be lessened. And it was on that point, there was also the risk, of course, it doesn't work out. But I'm very happy to see that the relationship in game has improved a lot. And ultimately, that was right. And I don't think we have the same issue this year at all. Because again, you have people who are strong in opinion, like Bloody. You have Lospa and Panos, who are also very confident giving their opinion on things. And that just makes it a team-wide discussion instead of the Elias against Ivan show, which we had to a degree last year.
Okay, so obviously this was also a big question within the community. Why are we still keeping Razork and Upset, since they didn't seem to get along, at least on the Rift? And I think Grabs did mention that in a previous video, but I believe it's always nice to repeat it and clarify those positions for people who might not see all the content that FNATIC produces. But one of the key goals for Grabs, obviously, was to bring people who were willing to speak. That wasn't the case last year, unfortunately. And from what he's saying, apparently this is getting solved, that he made the right decision and he's getting proven right. So doesn't reflect maybe on the results right now, but to have that new dynamic within the team was necessary, and it's nice to see that it's happening. So that's something hopefully that develops positively as we go through, but I believe that maybe this will crush, hopefully, the narrative between Razork and Upset not getting on in the game.
What is the long-term, like the grand strategy for this team? Is it a development team and that we are looking to have them as a long-term project, or are we? Yeah,
I think we're definitely in a development phase now, and perhaps FNATIC, myself, who could have been a bit more clear, articulating going into the season we are in now with the expectations and the goals. I think on the simple basis that our ecosystem keeps changing from one day to another in some way, but in a more macro ways, from one season to another. We are not as aggressive in our financial investment into the title as we once were. That is fine. I think many teams, if not all, would probably sign off on that kind of statement. The business model League of Legends looks very different to only 2 years ago, where you had, I probably can't say exactly the number, but multi-million-dollar revenues almost guaranteed by just showing up, okay? And we spend way more than that and took a lot of financial risk. At this point in time, I think it's a more long-term play in place for us. I think we are thinking and asking those big questions still, and updates can follow on this, but I wait until we have something concrete. But I see a world where we go into Academy. We definitely need to improve our performance infrastructure on the ground. That is not to say that you and Isa and Grabs are not doing your job accordingly, but to the previous topic, there's so much more we can do, especially if we're going at it from a quite rookie-oriented lineup. Do we want to be back lifting trophies? The answer is yes. Do we think that is possible with the current team? Actually, we think that is possible as well. It's going to take some time, but it's a journey we have to go on to now, and we disrupted in a way 2025 the core roster. When I say core roster, I kind of mean the 3 out of 5 that we've had for a long time. So it's definitely a new chapter in our history book at this point of time. But we are very competitive. We work really hard here. Probably everyone says they work hard, but we really still believe in the long term. But we are sensible in terms of how we invest in various esports. That's just the reality of things, because we want to be here not only next year, we want to be here in 5 years and 10 years and continue to build in League of Legends. I also stress the following, and that's great all in all, right? But it's very competitive out there, and other teams might be in different cycles. I saw a question here on the right that, yeah, what about those newcomers coming in? Yeah, that's how it is in every sport, I would argue, right? And we just have to deal with that. But yeah, we're obviously not in any kind of celebrating mode. That is just the sheer reality that we haven't lifted a trophy in a very long time. I think we've gotten very close. I think we've been consistent in terms of speaking about platform, taking players year on year to the international stages. I think we've done that probably better than anyone. I think many players, more than others, have the FNATIC bloodline in them in LEC. So there are some good stuff there as well. But I definitely think time is a factor. I think we need time to develop this roster. I think we need to do more from an organization standpoint. I do think we should have an academy, because I think we're really good at recruiting these days. And obviously, let's see what the results hold in the end. But those are things that are on my mind now, working more like long-term and holistically in League of Legends and other titles.
Okay, so that was actually pretty clear here. Mentioned before, obviously, Karn puts forward the fact that they haven't been as aggressive financially on this roster. And obviously, when you go into rookies, you're saving some of that money compared to having a superstar like Mickey X, obviously. So I think it was something that was necessary to tell to the bigger public, especially for fans who maybe don't realize the evolution of the ecosystem, especially when it comes to League of Legends. Obviously, we've spoken about the fact that Riot Games has changed the way they bring in cash prizes, where they've completely removed them for the regular league. And Karn mentions obviously as well the fact that where they would get millions for just appearing within the league, now not so much. And within that, you have to make the right strategies. And I'm going to repeat myself, I'm sorry about that, but FNATIC being a 20-year-old structure, it's going to be very different from new organizations that step into the league and are more in that big VC cash flow coming in, where they get to burn as much as possible until eventually they will have to pay back their investors, but they can bring in the cash, they can bring in the money. So being at a different stage of development means that FNATIC has to make those strategies. And I think this is where the frustration for fans comes, because they see the other teams that come in and that get the players that they want, and they don't understand why it's not happening within FNATIC. And this perspective, I think, actually I truly believe, should have been addressed way earlier, because I think this is where stems most of the frustration within the fans, that they don't understand, they make their assumptions, and then the wrong narratives get spread around, and we, in the end, don't really realize the challenges that FNATIC has to face. So very interesting on Karn's part, just putting us in front of the reality and the fact that they want FNATIC to continue living. They don't want it to become a TSM or other recent structures that had to sort of go bankrupt and leave the ecosystem. 20 years is massive within esports, and the fans, I believe, want to continue supporting FNATIC as long as it's still alive, instead of just being maybe a corpse. They are being very sensitive on their financial health. So obviously could be a bit disappointing if you feel that FNATIC is not there where they should be, but there's a lot of context as to why this roster is what it is and why the objectives and focus is more on a long-term basis. Also, I'll add very quickly the fact that Karn mentions Academy, which I guess makes a lot of sense, especially if you're looking to go back into rookies. You're wanting to create that source for new talent, and it has worked in some cases. Obviously, we had Broxa come in from our academy back in 2017. You can discuss about Oscar's performance as well. Very up and down, but was also from FNATIC Academy, and I believe that really FNATIC has the capacity of developing rookies. It requires the right resources, which right now they don't have, and they need to maybe invest more on the staff side and then bring in the rookies from their own pipeline. But that was great to hear, at least from Karn.
I think we can look forward to spring split. So we did have a question regarding when the players are back in Berlin. We've just had a break. The guys will be traveling on Tuesday, and we are back to normal, regular scheduled practice on Wednesday with a few workshops here and there. Grabs, do you want to maybe add on a few bits just for spring? Anything changing? Anything just with training and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, just a bit more, like less focus on the scrimmages that we actually played in the moment, and more focus on the overall read of how the game should be played. That means also taking less time in reviews and more time to actually look at how the top teams play, what can we learn from them, shifting a bit of focus there. Besides that, 2 weeks before LEC start is kind of the standard formula for most teams, also because the split is a lot longer. You don't want to start too early and then have people being burnt out by being in the same room for multiple months. The addition of, hopefully, it's not finished yet, as Patrick said, the new coach can also just make sure that if, let's say, I consider someone myself that I really like to talk about Drake's setup, for example, right? That I have the time to just say, okay, guys, you focus on today's reviews and I focus only on Drake's. And we have a more specialized approach to the topics we have, instead of trying to cover everything in a more basic function, I would say. And I think by adding that already will make our play a lot more efficient and better, without having to put in even more time. Because I think that's the misconception when people have when we talk about working hard, right? A normal esports player in a normal season is like working 10, 11 hours a day on average. That's normal. So if you then talk about working harder, means to upping this up to like 13, 14 hours, and that's a pensum you can only go for so long. We can sit here and talk about the differences in culture between the West and Korea, for example, where maybe that is a bit more doable. But you have to be very active in managing the stress on players in terms of workload. So we don't, like, I think the addition of having another staff member and taking away from our play only with the emotion attached to a bit more objective standpoint will make it better.
So here Grabs obviously is presenting his objectives for spring, and I would say for the rest of the season, putting forward the additional staff that really is going to help them focus more specifically on certain aspects of the game. It's nice to hear, first of all, that the players are coming back within the week, and that they have scrims, practice, workshops, as they call them, planned. It's going to be obviously a big element here to have the right, what I would say, approach into going into the spring split, because the fans are going to be watching, they're going to be hoping as well, and hopefully this new staff member gets added before the beginning of the new split. But with FNATIC, you never really know if those things are really going to happen in time. But from what also Graf said previously, is that it seems that the players are already improving on some of the aspects that were challenging for them, that were blocking them in their improvement and synergy. So some silver lining here going into the spring split. It's nice to see that they keep taking things seriously, that they keep believing despite the extremely disappointing winter split. Again, it all comes down to results. Here we'll have a format of best of 3, so more games, more practice. This could maybe help out when it comes to champion pool and getting more games under their arms. It will also reveal very quickly where this team stands, though all eyes on them going into spring, and fingers crossed that we'll see a different face for FNATIC. So that was it for the LEC AMA, and I believe that they answered most of the questions that the community as a whole had. I wish it had answered some of my questions, but there were some elements in there, so I won't complain too much. It was nice also that we got to hear a bit more about the financial situation of FNATIC and why they're making those decisions. I think it's very important for the fan to realize what FNATIC is and what type of structure they're supporting, because it's not a new structure, it's a very old structure. I'm going to repeat myself, 20 years in esports is massive, and with that comes some structural challenges with investors looking to get their money back, with the change of the ecosystem as well. Riot Games really not helping out in those situations, and the fact that they have to shift completely their strategy, looking more into rookies, and eventually having to build an academy. Now, when it's all said and done, fans will be looking at the result, and this is the only way where they can see that everything that's been explained the other day during the AMA is really taking place in the Rift. Now, additional coach that will be coming in. Players seem to be still in a good mood, and they are working hard to improve. And as mentioned, some signs of improvement are already showing within the players. The pieces are starting to come again, and one thing that fans want is to see this team work together. One thing obviously I didn't mention as well was the fact that the roster isn't changing, and anyone who thought that the roster was changing, I'm gonna say it was crazy. You have to commit to the project, otherwise you're showing that you didn't believe in the project in the first place if you're making changes between winter and spring. So it makes complete sense, and I don't really understand the discourse online of saying, oh, FNATIC is doomed, they're not changing the players, everything's gonna go wrong. They have to go through with it. They have to add more resources at the top to help the people at the bottom, especially with 2 new rookies coming into the roster. But that's going to be it for me. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about the AMA. Were you satisfied with the responses? Do you feel they could have done a little bit more? And make sure to follow and subscribe both on the Twitter and YouTube account to know what's going to come next. EMA tomorrow, this time more for the FPS games with Kojo and Razork, I believe, will be on there too. And Karn again, so eyes open on that one. I won't be covering that one. I'm still catering for League of Legends, but make sure you ask your questions on the app before the EMA tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching, and as usual, always FNATIC. See ya.